our next one on the agenda. Chevonne will be talking about SIAM and AI, dipping into the body of knowledge and the new compendiums that you can find there. So, Chevonne, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you. So just to confirm, you can see my screen.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
that's all good.
brilliant. Okay, so thanks everybody for joining the call today. This session from myself is, as Mark has just mentioned, is just a highlight on the AI and automation in SIAM compendium that was written and released in November last year. So I just want to mention some key names on the credits really, and the amazing contributors that all came together last year to bring this compendium together. So we had people, as you can see, the authors and contributors: Bijou from Capgemini, Michaela from Rhodolite, Prashant from HCL Tech. You've got Simone from SJM, her own company, Steve Fleming from Voxify, Suzanne Gallatley from Exin, Tim Hughes, who I've seen on the call today, who is an independent consultant, and also Dr. Thule Bell. So if you recognize any of these names, these are amazing industry leaders in SIAM, ITSM, AI, and automation. And so we really hope that when you get your hands on the copy of this compendium, you'll really find it very useful. So the compendium then, I'm just going to minimize the little pictures of Mark there. So the compendium obviously explains about how to use AI and automation in SIAM. What we tried to do was not necessarily talk about SIAM, because you can obviously find that in the body of knowledge itself, but really focus on how SIAM can provide the governance, the accountability, the ethics and the control that's needed to make sure that AI and automation is safe and delivers value within any organization. So the compendium, you will get some key takeaways from. So the compendium does cover the strategic context, so really thinking about the strategic vision of applying AI and automation within your SIAM ecosystem. It also shares detail around the operational model. So it does talk about things like roles and responsibilities, job security. It talks about obviously the processes and the practice itself. You'll also find information about the governance role. So thinking about the strategic, managerial, and operational aspects. The benefits, just a list of benefits that AI and automation can bring within your SIAM ecosystem. But of course, the challenges and the mitigation things that you need to bring in to ensure that that your AI is successful. And then just some key focus areas. So this does encompass things like the strategic aspect. It talks about the operational side, security and sustainability, reporting, and continual improvement. So going into some of the aspects of the compendium then, at the beginning of the compendium, what we've drawn on is the history of industries. So obviously we've had industry 1.0, 2, 3, and 4, and now we are moving into 5.0, which is really around the human and digital aspects of people and AI working together. So some of the key principles in Industry 5.0 is really focused on that human-centric part. So it's considering the aspects of experience metrics and also human-centered AI. So thinking about how your practices are being designed to ensure that humans are always engaged throughout those processes, and just how they're collaborating with the digital platforms. Industry 5.0 also includes the sustainability and social impact goals. It talks about the cognitive diversity and supplier strategy. So that's really thinking about the cultural aspects of your supplier, neurodiversity, and just the people that work within that supplier engagement that you might have. It's considering those aspects and how they work with your organization. And then the resilient integration patterns to ensure that the resilience is there with your digital platforms and the people who are working within your SIAM ecosystem. It then moves on into layering the legislation, regulation, compliance, and policy. So, what you will find in the compendium is a list of, at that point in time, the legislations and compliances that were available to us. And looking back at the compendium, it is still very relevant. So, from a legislation perspective, it is thinking about things like the EU AI Act, which is probably one of the best ones to follow. It's all-encompassing. But obviously, what you do need to think about is when you're engaging in a global or international organization, what are their legislations, what are their local laws, what are their regulations for AI. So it's making sure you take those things into account and not just the country you reside in. So a little bit like GDPR, making sure that, things are being followed across the board. There's also a piece in there around compliance. So that obviously looks at things like the ISOs, so the 42001 artificial intelligence standards. There's also a couple of others in there which lean into risk management as well. So I would definitely recommend reading through that list and just using it as a bit of a checklist, just to make sure that things are aligned and being followed within your own internal organization, even if not from a, compliance certificate perspective. These are still fantastic standards and guidelines to be working towards that protect your company, your employees, and your customers. And that leads me into the final piece, which is around policy. So capturing all of this information, doing your research and writing the policies for your organization to follow really drives that the right behaviors that you want to showcase. So one of the other aspects within the compendium is the governance backbone for AI. So this is looking at the strategic, managerial, and operational parts of a governance model. So the strategic is obviously focusing more on the overarching human oversight across your products and services. So where you are planning to use AI and automation, there is still humans in there who are overseeing certain approvals or rejection statuses. And so that's really important. We've all probably heard the term human in the loop. I actually was on a call the other day and I heard somebody say, "Oh, I'm just sick of hearing that term." But it's so true. It's making sure that, you still have humans as part of your processes and certainly at critical points of your process steps. Ensuring that your organization is using AI ethically. And there's a big piece of this in the compendium about ethics. And that obviously needs to be part of the company strategy and making sure that it aligns to your company's values as well. You've also got obviously the risk aspects of AI. And so understanding the risk where AI is being used to your organization and having that logged somewhere so that people are clear on where some of those risks are. And importantly is the accountability. So AI should not just sit in your tech department as being accountable. There should be other people who are accountable for the data, that is being produced. People should be accountable for the ethical aspects of AI. So I am talking about business owners, I'm talking about HR, I'm talking about your legal team. So not just your tech people, everybody has a part to play in that strategic, overarching, racy chart on who is doing what and when and how. And obviously your MSPs. So within your SIAM ecosystem, what are they accountable for when it comes to the information that is being fed into your AI platforms? The managerial aspect is then obviously looking at the data. There's so much talk at the moment about AI and its usage within IT organizations. So there are a number of organizations who have really cracked this and have really managed to embed fantastic AI, generative and agentic, and also AI ops for the self-healing aspects. But whilst AI is, finding like solutions to healthcare and identifying new medicines and all of these amazing things, we're still finding that within the IT organizations, we can't even get a knowledge article written up. We're struggling with our suppliers to share knowledge. We are struggling to make sure that our assets are up to date. We're struggling to identify which discovery tools we should be using to scan our technology and see what is in our estates. We're struggling to identify what are the most business critical servers to build our monitoring and event management platforms that will support things like agentic AI and AI ops. Until we resolve the data quality and the transparency of knowledge between our internal teams and our suppliers, it's going to be very difficult to apply any level of AI. And if you do, it will only enhance and expose some of those biggest gaps within the organization. That might be an approach you want to take. It might expedite some people to get moving and get that data updated, but it is also a risk in terms of what information is being shared to your senior leaders on their strategy, the decisions that are being made by IT and the business. So it's obviously a really big area of discussion. And then finally is the operational layer. So thinking about the accuracy of that data, fairness, reliability, auditability, and traceability. So it's obviously understanding then who is accountable for that data. How is it being maintained, not just created, uploaded, and forgotten about? Who is doing AI testing to make sure that hallucinations aren't happening and accurate information is being shared to your internal business, your customers, externally if you're serving those, and also within your IT operations. Making sure that you work really successfully as a team also relies on your teammates providing accurate information on how to resolve incidents before they become major. So there's a lot in there in the compendium that really delves deeper into this aspect and the operating model for governance. So one of the key areas that I mentioned is the ethical AI, and I've put this in as like a center of excellence aspect. So it's really thinking about in your IT organizations, where does your center of excellence for AI sit? Who holds the accountability for ensuring ethical AI is being dealt with, being managed, being enforced? To ensure that all of these parts of ethical AI are being considered. So just going through these very lightly. So like the right to privacy of your personal AI data, responsibility and accountability for the usage, safety and security. So obviously people use AI not just for IT aspects, but there could be business information in there. So what personal information is being uploaded and shared, multi-stakeholder adaptive governance and collaboration. So that's obviously making sure that when you're working with different stakeholders, that governance and collaboration is always present. Your stakeholder list, your RACI, those people on there are always collaborating, always talking, meeting up regularly to talk about the AI. Sustainability is obviously a key part of ethical AI in terms of the impact it has on the environment, and what we're using AI for. Um, we're seeing data centers being built all the time now. There's big money in that business, as AI continues to grow. So thinking about that aspect of how you're using sustainability targets as well. So your organization will have CO2 targets to adhere to. So it's looking into that and seeing what the impact of AI has to your organization's strategy, sustainability strategy. Awareness and literacy, again, knowledge sharing, making sure that it's accurate, proportionality and do no harm is an obvious one. So making sure that bias, unbiased information is going into the system that doesn't do harm to others and upsets people. Fairness and non-discrimination, similar to the do no harm, and human oversight and determination, which we spoke about, which is obviously making sure that you have some level of human oversight over your AI. It's not just left to its own devices. And then finally, transparency and explainability. So when you're creating those data sources, it should always have a link to where that data source has come from. How did AI come up with that knowledge? Where did it retrieve it from? So your AI should be sharing the links of where it's actually retrieved that information. And if it's an internal AI host, then it should at least have a link to the people or the team so that if somebody has any further questions, they can go to those people and ask. So there's some really key aspects there of ethical AI. And just to in the news of recent, you would have heard with Kalana, who removed roughly 1,200 people because they thought their AI could do all of the jobs, are now rehiring. So if you're looking for a role, there might be one at Kalana. And then another recent one a month ago, which was from a chap called Lee on IKEA. So IKEA have brought in AI. But they didn't just replace those 8,500 jobs. They've actually retrained those employees, which I thought was a really nice story, actually, because it doesn't have to just make a bunch of people redundant. If there's a proper strategy in place, a proper AI strategy aligned with the business strategy, then there are absolutely opportunities to retrain people, retrain them in AI for the human oversight aspects, but also start building out new parts of the strategy to increase that revenue for the company. So using AI as a value add to that organization to increase that return of investment. So some really good stories there, but very much aligned to that ethical AI piece. This isn't in, well, the Kalana one's in the compendium, but the IKEA one isn't. Um, in the compendium, there's actually a big section in there around security and also the large language models that are being used. So there's some good aspects of shared language models with your suppliers in your SIAM ecosystem. Of course, you can do some shared knowledge management, the ticket logging data, which is like the bane of most people's lives, is making sure that the data that's being logged is accurate. It's got enough information in there. The categories are being selected correctly, so that it all can feed into trend analysis and strategic decision making. Document processing. So obviously creating documents, reviewing documents. You'll have chatbots. So chatbots can be available with shared LLMs to ensure that the information that is coming from your SIAM ecosystem benefits all. And the decision support. So again, thinking about the decision making, the human oversight. But there's also some downsides to shared LLMs. So there is the data privacy aspect. So obviously these are things that you just need to consider. It's not to say that you can't use shared LLMs, but it's considerations that you just need to be mindful of when uploading that data into your AI platform. So obviously data privacy, you wouldn't put any internal company intellectual property in there, probably. But there might be some aspects that you're happy to share as per the contract. Prompt standards, so testing that's being performed for prompt standards might be difficult, but again, look at the RACI, who should be accountable. SIAM is about collaboration, it is about playing nice together. So bringing those people together to support that activity. Access control. So who has access to what in your LLMs? The hallucinations. So if one party isn't performing the role properly of prompt standards, then that could lead to some dangerous hallucinations. And then regulatory compliance. But again, with that, you can include those types of things into your contracts with your suppliers to say, as an organization, we follow these regulatory compliances and we expect you to do the same as part of the contract. So considerations to think of, pros and cons. And there's a lot of information in the compendium about this. So then finally, it brings me to the measuring what matters. So everything should be measured based on what is delivering value, the trust of your AI data, the security aspects of your AI, the ethics side and sustainability to really drive continuous improvement throughout your company. So obviously thinking about the SIAM governance. So that slide that I showed you with strategic, managerial and operational levels, think about all of the points that were in there and how they would be measured to ensure that they are being achieved. Human oversight, so looking at your end-to-end processes on how your services are being delivered. Where are those points? Where is that assurance, that quality check, that compliance, the regulation, the policies? Those are all going to be needed to have, they're all going to need some level of human oversight to make sure that people are using and following those regulations to ensure that AI is being used in an ethical way. So thinking about what do those measurements look like? The shared LLMs, so your security, your risks, your RACIs, are they well understood? Are they shared with all of your suppliers? How is that being measured? And then finally, the service integrator, which moves from a manual coordinator to a more strategic enabler, and making sure that all of these things are being looked at is obviously really important. And again, in the compendium, there are pages on the metrics that you can measure. So lots and lots of fantastic information in there about the metrics that you can include in your own dashboards within your company. And that's it. Any questions?
Thank you, Chevonne. That's really, really very helpful. I think it's quite amazing how much is in that guidance in the compendium. I think a lot of people will be dipping into that and helping them to position their support for AI going forward from their SIAM ecosystems. Um, do we have any particular questions for Chevonne? We've got a kind of couple of minutes available. If not,
I might
I'll
just
suggest.
read some of the things there. I think
Yeah, sure. Yep.
Jamie's made a really good point here. I think in the health space, AI is speeding up established research process. Absolutely. The things you mentioned, AI can't do in the ITSM space are things people have struggled to do for decades. Yeah,
Mm,
absolutely, Jamie. And this is the challenge. I've done a couple of presentations now on AI as exposing your ITSM. And you see all these things on the news about what AI is so capable of, and it's amazing, it's fantastic. But until we start writing knowledge and maintaining our assets and understanding what services are business critical, we're just not going to get there. Like those are the key things. But yeah, thank you. And thanks, Raymond. And everyone else. Thank you.
excellent. Thank you. Thanks, Siobhan.